Picture this. You're not sitting in Hillary's at Bellarmine University. It's not February 8th of 2011. Instead, it's January 12th of 2010, and you're walking through the city of Port-au-Prince. Suddenly, you hear a rumbling. It's like thunder, but it's funny, there's not a cloud in the sky. You look down the street, and the buildings begin to crumble. Before you have a chance to think, what on earth is happening? You're consumed by a pile of rubble. You've just become a victim of the 2010 Haitian earthquake. In the first day of the aftermath, CNN quoted the U.S. State Department as saying they were expecting a, quote, extreme loss of life, unquote. This catastrophe was so horrible, no one knew what to expect. Like the rubble that consumed so many lives, this incident took over the headlines at the beginning part of 2010. The New York Times had a total death toll of over 250,000 people. But ironically, none of these dead were shown. The entire media focused upon a relief effort or rescue operations that were going on in Port-au-Prince. The dead were not shown at all. There were death tolls, numbers, and graphs, but no pictures. The horrible truth was that these dead lay unburied for up to 2 weeks after the quake in mass graves. This is due to a renewed effort in censorship. However, the media itself is not to blame. It is due to the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC for short. However, the FCC didn't always have this power. So I'm going to start by showing you how they came to power, then show you the hypocrisy of their actions, and then how you can fight back. When it comes to the FCC, in 1978, they entered FCC versus Pacifica. This case started because a man was simply riding down the road, listening to the radio with his son in the car, and a rather obscene comedy routine, ironically called The 7 Words You Can't Say on Television, came on. The man called the FCC and complained, and therefore the FCC continued to sue the Pacifica Foundation, which had broadcast the comedy routine. In a 5-4 ruling, the FCC won. They then gained an exemption to the First Amendment of the Constitution, thereby allowing them not to directly censor broadcasts, but to sanction anything that they find obscene or inappropriate. This basically means that if you put something on the air that they don't like, you suddenly get a $1 million fine or something else quite as ridiculous. However, they only sanction when there are enough complaints. But the National Coalition Against Censorship, or the NCAC for short, found that one complaint sent to 5 different members of the FCC is counted as 5 different complaints. So to a particularly angry person who just so happens to look up the entire list of FCC members, sends out about 1,000 emails saying exactly the same thing, the FCC then counts it as 1,000 angry people who have the exact same problem with the exact same wording, and they just sort of look past the exact same name part. But this is not where their hypocrisy ends. The NCAC also found that Martin Scorsese's documentary, The Blues, was sanctioned due to its use of the F word. However, in weeks prior to this, ABC aired Saving Private Ryan with the F word intact. And needless to say, no sanction was involved to FCC, or to ABC. This left a subliminal message to all broadcasters. When in doubt, censor yourself. Why run the risk of paying $1 million? This then led to news stations fearing sanctions, and thereby cutting out the pictures of mass graves, or leaving nothing more than a blur across the screen. However, if they're honestly scared about showing the gore, they should just look to the Sci-Fi Channel. Weekly, they air movies that are, well, less than subpar. If you look past the lack of acting, the lack of funding for special effects, and the quite obvious lack of plot, these movies are nothing more than gory schlockfests. Whether it's a monstrous creature that some mad scientist has made that just so happens to leave people strewn limb from limb in a rather scenic location, or whether it's a poltergeist who has a taste for blood and turns household objects into means for a gruesome murder, or whether it's a psychotic trucker who just so happens to capture a couple of his victims and then makes them play craps and then tortures them depending on what their role. Oh, or here's a really good one. Teens are put into a reality show where they run off into the woods and run into mutant cannibals who not only torture them gratuitously, but then send their victims through a meat grinder in order to make their next meal. And again, no sanctions have been aired. But In all of these sci-fi movies, wherever an F-bomb would be dropped, the audio goes mysteriously silent. This brings me to how to fight back. Oh, sorry. The FCC's one argument is that they shelter children from harsh or inappropriate or obscene materials. Huh, funny. You could just, put a child block on that certain channel, or perhaps change the channel entirely. There's this magic thing called a remote control. Maybe you've heard of it. You just press one button and then you're not watching the same show anymore. The FCC has no argument anymore. So what are we to do? We should join the NCAC. You simply go to their website, the ncac.org, click on their Take Action tab, and join their email group. It's quick, it's simple, it takes about 5 minutes. And they'll keep you updated on the latest protests, petitions, rallies, and the issues themselves. Just by having this uncensored information and knowing what's going on, that should be enough to fight censorship, right? But honestly, it's not enough. A solution is no good without action. So are we going to continue to let the FCC tell us what we can and cannot handle? They're not even telling us, you can't handle the truth. They're not telling us that there's a truth that we can't handle. Are we really going to let them dictate and say that these sci-fi movies, they're perfectly fine, but reality of mass graves, that's too much for us? The horrible truth, I choose to see that. And so I say, give me censorship or give me death. And in this death, show me the truth.